The airport was crowded that morning. People rushed from one place to another, pulling bags, holding coffee, and checking phones. Long lines formed near the check-in counters. In the first-class line, men in suits and women with expensive handbags stood tall, waiting calmly. Then, a man walked toward the first-class line. He was old, maybe in his late 60s. His skin was dark, his shoes were clean but worn, and he wore a simple gray suit with no brand name. He didn't walk fast. He walked slowly but with confidence. Some people turned to look. A few whispered. A young woman at the desk raised her eyebrows as he came closer. She had a name tag that read Chloe. "Excuse me, sir," Chloe said loudly with a small laugh. "This line is for first-class passengers." The old man looked at her. His eyes were calm. "I know," he said softly. She crossed her arms. "Then you must be lost. Economy check-in is that way," she said, pointing behind her. People in the line chuckled. A man in a business suit smirked. A woman whispered to her friend, "Why do they even try?" The old man didn't say anything. He took a deep breath and gently placed his ticket on the counter. Chloe didn't even look at it. "Sir, you're holding up the line," she said sharply. Another worker nearby called for help. A tall manager in a black jacket walked over. He looked at the man, then at Chloe. "What's the problem?" the manager asked. "This man's trying to check into first class," Chloe said with a small smile, expecting the manager to laugh too. The manager looked at the old man, then glanced at the ticket. Finally, he scanned it into the computer. Suddenly, his face changed. He stood up straighter. "Sir, he stammered. But the old man had already picked up his ticket. He gave the manager a small smile, then took out his phone. He stepped aside, leaned against the wall, and made a short phone call. His voice was quiet, but firm. "Activate Protocol 4. Yes. This airport. Immediate effect." Then he hung up. The workers didn't notice. They were still talking about him. "Can you believe he tried to get in here?" one whispered. "Maybe he found that suit in a donation box," another joked. None of them knew who he was. None of them noticed the small company logo on the inside of his coat, a logo only powerful people in the aviation world would recognize. Minutes later, the airport screens began to flicker. "Flight system down," a voice said over the radio. "Sir, we can't print boarding passes. Gates aren't updating." The manager's face turned pale. Chloe's smile disappeared. People started getting angry. Phones rang. Staff ran around in confusion. But the old man, he just watched. He stood quietly by the window, hands behind his back, as the airport slipped into chaos. Security guards walked faster now. Airport staff were confused. Managers whispered to each other near the service desks. Some computers started working again, then suddenly stopped. The screens at the gates flickered again. In the middle of all this, the old man stood still. He watched as the chaos unfolded. People were getting impatient. Some shouted at the staff. Others stared at their tickets and asked what was going on. Chloe looked nervous. Why is everything shutting down? Why isn't the system responding? The manager pulled out his phone and called someone. "We have a serious problem. Nothing's working. Not even backup systems." On the other side of the airport, in a private lounge, two men in suits sat drinking coffee. One of them checked his phone and stood up suddenly. "Turn on the news," he said. The TV showed a live report. Breaking. Mysterious system failure at international airport. Hundreds of flights delayed. The man picked up his phone and made a call. "Is Mr. Langston at the airport?" he asked. "Yes, sir," someone replied. "Then that explains everything," he said quietly. Back near the check-in counters, Chloe finally noticed something strange. The man she mocked earlier wasn't angry. He didn't panic. He wasn't even surprised. He looked like he had seen it all before. The same man who was told this line isn't for you. Chloe watched him carefully now. She walked slowly toward him. Sir, can I help you with anything?" The old man turned his head toward her. His voice was calm. "Do you know who owns this airport?" She blinked. "What? No, the city, right?" The man smiled, just a little. "This airport belongs to a private company, and I happen to sit on its board." Chloe's face turned red. I didn't know," she started. "You didn't ask," he said softly. "You looked at me and assumed." He turned away, walking slowly again. This time, no one laughed. One of the senior airport directors ran toward him. "Mr. Langston, I'm so sorry about what happened. We had no idea you were arriving today." Langston nodded. "I know. That's why I came like this." The director looked confused. "Sir," Langston continued, "I wanted to see how the staff treat people who don't wear a suit with a logo. People who walk slow. People who don't look rich." The director gulped. "I understand now. I will personally deal with it." Langston turned his head slightly. "Don't fire her," he said. "Sir." She was only reflecting what this place teaches. Train your people better. The director nodded quickly. Meanwhile, Chloe stood frozen. She realized what she had done. Her words played again in her mind. "This line is for first class. You must be lost." She looked down at her shoes. She didn't know what to say anymore. Langston walked past her again, calmly, heading toward the lounge. But before entering, he stopped. He looked back at Chloe. "What did you see when you looked at me earlier?" he asked gently. She looked up slowly. Her lips trembled. "I saw someone who didn't belong. And now," she looked like she might cry, "I see someone I misjudged. I'm sorry." Langston nodded. "Next time, don't look at the clothes. Look at the eyes." With that, he walked into the VIP lounge. Inside, everything was quiet. A hostess bowed and welcomed him in. He sat down at a table near the window and pulled out a small notebook. His hand moved slowly as he wrote something on a page. On the paper, he wrote, "True class is not seen. It is felt in how you treat others." Outside the glass, people still rushed around. Flights were slowly getting back on track. But something had changed in the air. Everyone was quieter, more alert, more careful. Chloe stood by the desk with watery eyes. She had just learned a lesson no school could teach. The VIP lounge was quiet, filled with soft music, warm lights, and calm voices. Men and women in fine suits talked in low tones, sipping coffee or reading newspapers. But one person sat alone near the window, his face calm, eyes sharp. Mr. Langston. Some recognized him. Most didn't, but the people who did whispered quietly behind their coffee cups. "That's him, isn't it?" "Yes." Langston, the man who built 3 tech companies and saved 2 airlines. No wonder the systems stopped working when he made a call. A young man in a suit entered the lounge. His name was Marcus. He worked for one of Langston's companies and had been called in urgently. He spotted Langston and walked quickly over. "Sir, I'm here." Langston looked up and nodded. "Sit." Marcus sat straight, hands folded. "The systems are slowly coming back online, sir. Our team reversed the lockdown signal." Langston didn't say anything for a moment. He looked out the window. Then he spoke softly. "Do you know why I triggered the lockdown?" Marcus nodded. "You were treated badly, sir. Very disrespectfully." Langston shook his head. "It's not about me." Marcus was confused. "Sir." Langston placed his hand on the table. "It's about how people treat others when they think no one is watching. That young woman at the counter. She didn't hesitate. She saw an old man and decided I didn't belong." He leaned forward. "What if I really wasn't anyone important? Would she still have treated me that way? And how many more are treated like that every day?" Marcus was silent now. Langston looked him in the eye. "Power is not just for making money. It's for making change." Meanwhile, back at the main terminal, Chloe sat on a bench, holding a bottle of water. Her hands shook slightly. The manager had told her she wouldn't be fired, but she couldn't shake the look in Langston's eyes. He wasn't cruel. He didn't shout. He didn't even insult her. But that quiet stare had said everything. She remembered her exact words. "This line isn't for you. Sir, economy is that way." She had assumed. Because he was black. Because he wore old clothes. Because he walked slow. Now she knew better. A few passengers nearby were watching news clips on their phones. Some were whispering. One man said, "Did you hear? The whole system froze because of one phone call. From that old man." Another said, "He's a billionaire, you know." Chloe lowered her head. She had mocked someone she should have respected, and it hurt more because, deep inside, she knew she had judged him unfairly. Inside the lounge, Langston and Marcus reviewed a short file. Langston tapped the screen. "This airport is under our investment group. I want new staff training policies. I want bias tests, and I want mystery checks every month." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, typing notes quickly. "And Marcus?" "Yes." Langston's voice dropped lower. "I don't want that girl fired." Marcus raised his eyebrows. Langston continued, "She needs to stay, learn, grow, then teach others." He leaned back. Shame only changes people for a day. But lessons, real lessons, they change hearts. A few hours later, Langston stood up and left the lounge. His flight had been delayed but was ready now. He walked toward the gate. This time, no one stopped him. Some bowed their heads. Some just moved out of his way. But Langston didn't walk with pride. He walked with purpose. At the gate, he stopped. Chloe stood nearby, holding some boarding slips. She saw him and straightened up. "Sir." He looked at her. "I just wanted to say." She paused. "I was wrong." Langston waited. "I shouldn't have judged you like that," she said. "I saw your skin, your clothes, and I thought you were less." Tears filled her eyes. "You weren't. You were more. And I was small." Langston nodded. "Thank you." She looked surprised. "I thought you'd be angry," she whispered. "I was disappointed," he said softly. "But anger fades. What matters is what you do next." She wiped her eyes. "I want to do better." Langston pulled something from his coat pocket, a small card. He handed it to her. She looked down at it. It had his name. And below it, Langston Global Leadership Program, scholarships, internships, second chances. Her lips parted in shock. "I see potential in people," he said, "especially those who learn from their mistakes." He turned and walked toward the plane. Up in the sky, the airplane soared through the clouds. Inside, Langston looked out the window. One act of judgment had triggered a storm, but that storm had cleared the air. He smiled. The real journey wasn't in flying. It was in lifting hearts. The airplane moved gently across the clouds, like a bird floating in the sky. Inside, people chatted quietly, some watching movies, some reading, others just resting. But Mr. Langston didn't speak. He sat near the window, hands folded in his lap, eyes watching the sky. The world outside was soft and peaceful, but inside his heart, a storm still moved. He remembered Chloe's face when she realized who he was. The fear, the shame, and the tears. It wasn't just her words that struck him. It was her eyes. The regret was real, and that meant something. But still, how many more people were out there, ready to judge a person just by how they look? He sighed softly. Next to him, a young boy about 12 years old was staring. Langston noticed, smiled kindly. "Hello, son." "Hi," the boy said. "Are you someone important?" Langston smiled wider. "What makes you ask that?" "I saw people whispering about you when we got on. One guy even stood up real fast to give you his seat." Langston chuckled. "I guess I've done a few important things." The boy looked shy but curious. Like what? Well, Langston said slowly, I help people build their dreams. The boy's eyes lit up. Like a superhero. Langston laughed. Not quite. But sometimes, a kind word or one chance can save a life. He pointed outside the window. You see those clouds? Yeah. Each one has a different shape, right? But they all share the sky. That's how people are. Different, but we all belong. The boy nodded, thinking. Langston asked, What do you dream of becoming? The boy looked down. A pilot. But my mom says it's hard. That people like us don't always get that chance. Langston's voice softened. People like us. You mean, people who look like you and me? The boy nodded slowly. Langston leaned forward. Let me tell you something, son. People may doubt you. They may laugh. Some will even try to stop you. He paused. But you don't let them decide your future. You decide. With your hard work, your kindness, and your truth. The boy's smile returned. And for the first time, in a while, Langston felt peace. Back in the airline's corporate office, chaos continued. Reports came in fast. Security glitches. System outages. Delayed flights. Angry customers. The CEO of the airline, a woman named Mrs. Arden, stood at her desk, looking pale. She was holding her phone tightly. He controls more than 8% of our shares, she said to her assistant. We had no idea he was flying today. Her assistant gulped. Do we apologize? Mrs. Arden nodded slowly. We don't just apologize. We make this right. Meanwhile, in the airplane, Langston's phone buzzed. A message appeared. Mr. Langston, this is CEO Arden. We sincerely apologize. We are aware of the incident and are launching a full investigation. Please allow us to meet in person and discuss ways to ensure this never happens again. Langston didn't reply right away. He looked at the boy beside him, bright eyes full of hope. Then he typed a short message back. Meet me when we land. And make sure Chloe is there too. When the plane landed, a quiet excitement moved through the cabin. Passengers looked around, some knowing what had happened, others sensing something important was in the air. As Langston stood, the boy looked up. Mr. Langston, will I really be able to fly planes one day? Langston smiled warmly and handed him a small card. Send your mom this email. Tell her Mr. Langston said you belong in the sky. The boy's eyes widened. Really? Really? Langston placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Fly high, son. At the gate, a small group waited nervously. Chloe was there, fidgeting with her hands. Her eyes were red but focused. Next to her stood Mrs. Arden, dressed professionally, face full of worry. When Langston appeared, silence fell. Mrs. Arden stepped forward. Mr. Langston, I'm so sorry for. Langston raised a hand gently. I'm not here for speeches. She paused. He looked at Chloe. You remember what you said to me? Chloe nodded slowly. Yes, sir. And you remember how you felt when the truth came out? She nodded again. Langston looked at Mrs. Arden. She's not the only one who needs training. Your whole system needs change, top to bottom. He pointed toward the terminal. Too many people in suits, not enough people with sight. Mrs. Arden swallowed hard. You're right, sir. Langston handed her a file. Start here. New employee training, diversity tests, and customer behavior reviews. She took the file quickly. Then Langston looked at Chloe again. And you? She looked up, expecting more shame. But he said, you're coming to our summer program. You'll meet students from all over the country, and you'll learn how to lead. Her eyes filled with tears. You're giving me a second chance. No, Langston said, smiling softly. I'm giving you the first one that matters. The airport was quieter now. The loud footsteps, boarding calls, and rolling suitcases had faded, but something still lingered in the air, something powerful. It wasn't just about a flight anymore. It was about respect. It was about justice. It was about change. Mr. Langston walked slowly through the terminal, past a group of airline employees who now looked at him with a mix of awe and guilt. Some nodded respectfully. Others lowered their eyes. But he kept walking, his face calm. A few feet ahead, the large glass doors led outside, to the world again. But before stepping through, Langston stopped at one last gate. Gate 44. He remembered it clearly. It was where Chloe had pointed him away. It was where the shame had started. The whispers, the stares, the pain. He stood there, just watching. A young employee around Chloe's age walked over shyly. He wore the same uniform, same name tag, but something was different. He smiled. "Mr. Langston." "Yes, I just wanted to say thank you," the boy said. "I saw what happened, and I've never been prouder to work here." Langston looked at him kindly. "That means something." The boy reached into his pocket and handed him a small pin. "We made this after today's meeting. For you." Langston looked at it. It was a small gold airplane. Underneath, one word was carved. "Belong." He held the pin in his palm and nodded. "Thank you, son." Across the city, news cameras flashed. Reporters stood outside airline offices, telling the story. After being denied basic respect, the black CEO didn't shout or threaten. He educated and inspired. Langston's story is changing the way airlines handle customer service, especially for people of color. One moment of judgment led to one of the greatest acts of leadership this year. But Langston didn't care about the cameras. He cared about the small things. He cared about Chloe. He cared about the boy on the plane. And most of all, he cared about the people still standing in the wrong lines, waiting to be seen. The next morning, Chloe stood nervously in front of a new group of trainees. She wore a different uniform now. Not a receptionist anymore, but a training supervisor. She looked around at the faces, some nervous, some bored. Then she spoke. "I want to tell you a story," she said. "It's about a man I judged before I even said hello. A man I thought didn't belong. But he turned out to be the owner of more than just wealth. He owned grace, wisdom, and truth." She paused. "That man changed my life. And now I'm here to make sure no one else makes the mistake I did." The room fell silent. But it wasn't the quiet of boredom. It was the silence of respect. In another part of the country, a young boy sat beside his mother, holding a letter in his hand. His eyes lit up. "Mom, look, it's from Langston Foundation. I got into the pilot program." His mother gasped, covering her mouth with tears. On the back of the envelope were 4 small words. "You belong in the sky." And Langston. He returned to his office, high in a tall building with windows that looked down at the city. He placed the "Belong" pin on his desk, beside a photo of his mother. She had raised him in a neighborhood full of "you can't." But she had always said one thing. "One day, you will walk through doors that others try to close. Walk through proud." He looked at the photo and whispered, "You were right, Mama." Then he turned to the window, watching a plane soar across the morning sky. And he smiled. Because he knew. This time, the right man was in first class. And the whole world knew it too.